The once brilliant student is nothing like he used to be. Well, I guess it's to be expected from a high school graduate. Jason sneered at me after glancing at my face. Even though I had been enjoying the college reunion, his arrival ruined the mood instantly. As Jason's obnoxious behavior and loud laughter caught everyone's attention, the people around us started murmuring. "You didn't end up with much of a job either, did you? You should just go home and stop pretending you're not broke. Oh, by the way, I'm with that famous company." After mocking me, he launched into his usual self-promotion, just like old times. Honestly, it's been years, and he still hasn't changed. I sighed in exasperation. Just then, another person joined the conversation. "Hey, Jason. Do you even know who you're talking about?" She turned to me and smiled. That smile was as beautiful as ever, capturing my heart just like it did back then. When her vividly colored lips revealed my true identity, the room buzzed with astonishment, and Jason collapsed to his knees, stunned. "My name is Alex. I'm just an average guy, except for being a bit taller than most. With black-framed glasses and slightly long bangs, my appearance, far from fashionable, often gives people the impression that I'm a nerd or someone who looks like he studies a lot. And to be honest, I do consider myself pretty good at studying. I attended college thanks to scholarships. My parents divorced, so it was just my mom, Sarah, and me living modestly. Despite this, I had a crush like any other person. It all started when I ended up sitting next to a classmate in a seminar, and I began helping her with her studies. Her long, slender limbs and small face made her look like a model, with slightly downturned eyes and a small mole near her eye that added a touch of sensuality. She had a mature aura that made it hard to believe she was the same age as me. Her name was Emily. Emily wasn't just beautiful on the outside, she had a kind heart as well. While many people avoided or frowned at my unkempt appearance, Emily always looked me straight in the eye when we talked. Even when my nerves made it hard to converse smoothly, she never showed any sign of ridicule. Emily always waited patiently, her gentle eyes encouraging me. Every time she gazed at me with those clear eyes, my heart pounded so loudly that I feared she would notice my feelings for her. Emily, who was popular for her beauty, and me, quiet and often labeled a nerd. It was obvious that we didn't match, but I was in love with her. I spent months unable to muster the courage to confess my feelings. Usually, we studied in the campus library or a cafe, but one day I forgot something at home, and we ended up studying in my room instead. My mom always came home late. That day, I was excited about the time I would get to spend alone with Emily in my room, thinking my mom would be late as usual. But of course, things didn't go as planned. My mom came home much earlier than expected. I almost blurted out, "Why today of all days?" But instead, I introduced Emily to my mom. Of course, as just a friend. However, for some reason, my mom got the wrong idea and exclaimed, "I can't believe you brought home such a beautiful girl," and went into full-on hostess mode. But we were just a poor, single-parent household. There wasn't much we could do. My mom did her best to prepare a meal, simple as it was, with the limited resources we had. Even though it wasn't anything fancy, both Emily and my mom seemed to enjoy the meal. That day, Emily's expression seemed softer than usual, and it wasn't just my imagination. As the three of us sat around the table, Emily quietly said, "This reminds me of when my mom was still alive." Emily lost her mother to illness when she was in middle school, and since then, she's lived with her busy father. Perhaps the similar family situations helped to bring Emily and me closer together. I think my mom must have felt something, too. "Emily, you're welcome to come here anytime. You can even think of me as your mom if you like," she said. Half joking, but with a sincere look in her eyes. Emily, surprised, froze with wide eyes. "Mom, come on. If Emily and Alex get married, I'll get to be her other mom too. That might be a great idea. What are you saying?" "Sorry about that, Emily." I tried to stop my mom's slightly overzealous comments and glanced over at Emily. "What? Emily? Are you okay?" But the next moment, Emily started to cry. Seeing her tears, I panicked, but she looked at us and smiled through her tears. "Thank you. I'm really happy." Hearing those words, my mom, with a relieved expression, gently patted Emily's back until her tears stopped. After that, we finished dinner without any issues, and since it was getting late, I decided to walk Emily home. Even though we didn't have much time alone, perhaps because we had shared a meal together and I had seen her tears, I felt closer to Emily than ever before. Maybe that's why I was more nervous than usual, feeling like I needed to say something, but no topics came to mind. The only sound on the quiet night road was the echo of our footsteps. Emily was the first to break the silence. "Sorry for staying so late today." "No, I'm the one who should apologize." My mom was a bit pushy, and she said some weird things. "You can just forget about it." I recalled my mom's earlier comment. "If you two got married." I'd be thrilled if that happened, but unless Emily felt the same way, it was just wishful thinking. And the chances of her liking someone like me were incredibly slim. In other words, my mom's words were nothing more than a fantasy. But I thought it would be nice if that happened. What? I had just convinced myself it was impossible, yet here Emily was, saying something I never expected, causing me to stop in my tracks. A few steps ahead, Emily turned around, her long hair swaying. "Alex, I like you. Didn't you notice?" In the quiet night, her gentle voice echoed. Bathed in the moonlight, she looked like a goddess or an angel from a story or painting, so beautiful that I couldn't help but stare. "What about you, Alex? How do you feel about me?" Sensing her anxiety from my silence, her voice wavered slightly. Hearing that, I clenched my fists. I have to tell her how I feel. "I like you too, Emily. Will you go out with me?" "Yes." Emily smiled. A tear glistened at the corner of her eye as it fell. She looked so beautiful that before I knew it, she had jumped into my arms, looking up at me. I gently wiped away the tears from her cheek. Emily let out a soft, happy laugh, her shoulders shrugging as if tickled. Overcome with affection for her, I gently wrapped my arms around her slender body. And just like that, Emily and I began dating. Even now, it feels like a miracle, something I can hardly believe. But every time I see Emily smiling beside me, I realize that this is real, and my heart fills with warmth. Our friends celebrated our relationship, but not everyone was happy that I, of all people, ended up with the popular Emily. Among them, Jason's attitude was especially obvious. Jason was the son of a high-ranking executive at some company, with good looks and decent grades. He was confident, with his wealth, looks, and future prospects all lined up, and his usual behavior was full of snide remarks. Honestly, he wasn't the type of person I wanted to be around, so I tried to avoid him as much as possible. Since Emily and I started dating, though, my school life had been going smoothly. I found something I wanted to do in the future, and my studies became more focused than ever. Every day felt fulfilling. But it seemed that my life wasn't meant to go so smoothly. In the fall of my sophomore year, my mom, who had always been so energetic, suddenly collapsed. She was rushed to the hospital and underwent emergency surgery. The surgery was successful, but the doctors explained that long-term treatment and possibly more surgeries would be needed in the future. All of which would come with enormous costs, far beyond what our poor single-parent household could afford. "Mom." My mom lay unconscious in the hospital bed. I had always believed she would stay healthy, that she would never fall ill, but of course, parents are human too. The hand I held after so long felt much thinner than I remembered. It was only now, in this moment, that I truly understood the hardships she had endured. And I made up my mind. After all the years my mom spent supporting me, it was my turn to support her. "I'll handle everything, Mom. You just rest." I whispered these words to my sleeping mom before leaving the hospital room. From that day on, my life changed completely. I spent every free moment working part-time jobs. I told Emily about my mom's situation, but since our time together was my emotional support, I squeezed in moments to see her between school and work. But the new lifestyle quickly took its toll on my body. With late-night shifts messing up my sleep schedule, I started being late for both dates and classes. Even when I met up with Emily, I was so sleep-deprived that my mind was foggy, and she often worried, saying, "Alex, are you okay? You don't have to push yourself so hard." Every time we met, all I could do was apologize. This exhausting lifestyle continued until one day. "We should break up." Emily told me this as I arrived late to yet another meeting. Her words swirled around in my tired mind, unable to process them fully. She looked at me with a sad expression before walking away. All I could do was watch her leave in silence. Of course, I didn't want to break up with Emily. My feelings for her hadn't changed. In fact, they had only grown stronger over time. But recently, I couldn't make time for her, couldn't keep my promises. And on top of that, I had no money. Being with a guy like me must only bring her pain. I could understand why she had given up on me. I was barely holding it together as it was. Losing the one person who had been my support, I quickly fell into a state of apathy. A few days after our breakup, Jason somehow heard about it and came to see me. He was dressed in expensive clothes and wearing a flashy watch. In contrast, I was wearing cheap, fast fashion aimed at young people. "Alex, I heard you broke up with her." "Yeah," I responded weakly, and Jason exaggeratedly patted my shoulder. "Someone like her needs everything to be just right." "Well, at least you got to have a nice dream, now it's time to focus on the real world." He said what he wanted and then left. Someone like her needs everything to be just right. Jason's words cut deep into my heart. With my mom's ongoing hospital bills and treatment costs, there was no way I could afford to take Emily on nice dates or buy her gifts. I realized I no longer had the right to be by Emily's side. It became too painful to even look at her. So, I decided to drop out of college. While my breakup with Emily played a part, the main reason was financial. No matter how many part-time jobs I took on, there was only so much I could earn. And it seemed pointless to continue paying for college when I couldn't afford the time or money. If I quit now, at least the amount I'd have to repay for my scholarship would be less. So, I chose to find a job instead. Finding a job in the middle of the year with only a high school diploma was incredibly tough. Unsurprisingly, there was no way I could land a job with good pay or benefits, and I eventually ended up at a so-called black company. I worked from morning till night, with verbal abuse from my boss being a daily routine. As a college dropout with just a high school diploma, I became an easy target, and my coworkers mocked me every day. On top of that, whenever I went out for sales, I'd see students my age walking happily around town, enjoying life. Living like this day after day, my spirit was gradually worn down. Why is this happening to me? This isn't how it was supposed to be. These thoughts kept swirling in my mind. Recently, I had been dreading visiting my mom in the hospital, overwhelmed by various emotions. Even after I told her that Emily and I had broken up, my mom kept bringing up Emily's name. She mentioned her so many times that I finally snapped. "It makes me feel miserable when you mention Emily, so please stop." My mom apologized quietly, saying, "I'm sorry." Since that day, she never brought up Emily again, but it made visiting her feel awkward. By the time I found a job, 2 months had passed since our breakup, but I still had feelings for Emily. That's why I didn't want to think about her. I didn't want to remember that day we broke up. I still dream about it. Those happy times I spent with Emily. How can I get her back? That thought occupied my mind every time I dreamed of her. 7 years have passed since then, and today was the college reunion. The hotel where it was being held was bustling with people. At 27, everyone looked sharp in their suits, but as soon as we started talking, it felt like old times. Even though I had dropped out and lost touch with everyone, they still treated me just as they had back then. And I naturally found myself joining their lively circle. After a while, there was some commotion near the entrance. I looked over and saw someone who immediately caught my eye. It was the person I had wanted to see. "It's been a while, Alex." "Emily, yeah, it's been a while." She was beautiful back then, but age had only added to her charm. We seemed to stare at each other for a moment, but then a familiar voice interrupted. "Emily, you're here." "Oh, Jason." Jason pushed through the crowd that had gathered around Emily. As always, he was decked out in designer brands from head to toe. "I was hoping to see you today, so I made sure to look my best." "You're as beautiful as ever. Wait, is that Alex?" Jason, who had been focused solely on Emily, finally noticed me and sounded surprised. "Good to see you too, Jason." When I greeted him, he frowned and made no effort to hide his displeasure. "Alex, what are you doing here?" "What do you mean?" "It's the reunion, right?" Jason's question, so obvious in nature, left not only me but also everyone around us looking puzzled. Yeah, it's the reunion. The fee's not exactly cheap, so are you sure you can afford to attend? I mean, you dropped out because you couldn't afford to stay in school, right? Jason's words caused a stir among the group. But, oblivious to the growing tension around him, Jason kept talking. No matter how smart you were in school, with just a high school diploma, you couldn't have landed a decent job, right? I've been worried. Thinking you must be having a tough time. He slung an arm around my shoulders and smirked. Perhaps he was emboldened by the reunion atmosphere, but his words were pretty insulting. I see you're still the same. I started to say, but before I could, our classmates around us spoke up, looking at Jason with exasperation. Jason, don't you know? Alex is filthy rich now. What? What are you talking about? Seriously, you didn't know? Alex is the CEO of NH Systems. After dropping out of college, I quickly realized the company I worked for wasn't worth my time. Being mocked for being a high school graduate and a dropout was infuriating. So I decided to put my college studies to good use and started a systems company. The early days were tough, but eventually, the system we developed started getting adopted by various companies. And after securing a contract with a major corporation, our reputation skyrocketed. From there, our business grew rapidly, and now I'm a CEO with an annual income of over $500,000. Well, I've been through a lot. Thanks to that, I'm doing pretty well for myself now. Alex, a CEO. That can't be right. Well, since you were concerned about me, I should at least thank you. Oh, and by the way, are you all heading to an after party later? It's on me. Let's all have a good time. My offer was met with cheers from the crowd. Even the girls who had ignored me back in the day were squealing with excitement. In no time, a crowd gathered around me, and as it swelled, Jason seemed to disappear from sight. As I chatted with my classmates, I made my way toward Emily. Emily, you're coming to the after party, right? I smiled and reached for her hand, but she subtly pulled away. Maybe she was just feeling shy after all this time. Yeah. I'm planning to go. Great. Don't worry about anything, just order whatever you like. Thanks. Although I couldn't talk much with Emily after that, the after party was a huge success and ended without a hitch. I paid for everything as I had promised, but it wasn't a big deal. It probably cost less than a recent business dinner with a client. With that thought, I started looking for Emily. Emily. When I called out to her, she looked a bit confused. I didn't get much chance to talk to you. Would you like to chat for a bit? I can drive you home. Sure. I'm glad. I've been holding back on drinking because I plan to drive you. I see. Her hesitant reply caught my attention, but I walked with her to the car anyway. She remained silent the entire time. I escorted her to the passenger seat and then sat in the driver's seat. Once I closed the door, the noise from outside quieted down, and I felt like we finally had a moment to ourselves. Are you still living with your parents? No, but I told them I'd be coming home tonight. I see. I'll drive you there, then. Please. It would take about 30 minutes to get to her parents' house. Although I was a bit disappointed that we wouldn't have much time together, I was still thrilled to be spending time with Emily after so long. Alex, you've changed. Really? You seem more confident than before. Well, yeah. If you hesitate, you lose in this competitive world. I've had enough of being looked down on. Now, I'm a company president with plenty of money to my name. There are plenty of people who respect me. I'm not the timid, indecisive person I used to be. Surely, Emily must prefer a reliable man like that. I took her words as a compliment and felt quite pleased with myself. However, Emily's expression remained tense as she looked straight ahead. How's your mom doing? I was caught off guard by her question, as I had been about to talk about my company and the new house I had just bought. But considering how close Emily and my mom had been when we were together, I figured it was only right to tell her how my mom was doing now. Mom's doing fine. The first hospital didn't have the right facilities, so I had her transferred. The new hospital is top-notch, with 24/7 care. so I can rest easy knowing she's in good hands. Do you visit her often? Visiting? It's fine. The nurses are there for her. In reality, I hadn't been visiting much since she was transferred to the new hospital. The care there is thorough, and they'd contact me if anything happened. Besides, I'd been too busy with work to find the time to go to the hospital. Don't you think your mom would be happy if you visited her? I've given her a tablet and a phone, so we video chat and exchange messages now and then. She's got a private room, so she's comfortable. And the food there is great too. I went on to tell Emily about the hospital's impressive facilities and the excellent reputation of the doctors. Before I knew it, we had arrived near Emily's parents' house. This is fine. Thanks for the ride. Okay. I stopped the car, and Emily got out. Emily, wait. I quickly got out and called after her as she started to walk away. There's something I want to talk about. Please, hear me out. Emily turned around slowly, her expression still distant and cold. But I didn't let that deter me. I decided to tell her how I felt. The feelings I'd been holding onto for the past 7 years. Emily, I've never stopped loving you. Back then, I was weak and broke, and I probably only made you worry. So, I understood why you left me. But now, things are different. Now, I can give you anything you want. I can fulfill any wish you have. So, can't we start over? I had finally gathered everything I lacked back then. Now, I believed I was worthy of Emily. I looked straight into her eyes, confident that I would see that familiar smile return. I truly believed she would smile at me once again. But I'm sorry, she said, her face still hard. What? My voice came out hoarse, as if it wasn't even mine. My mouth went dry, and I couldn't speak properly. I'm sorry, she repeated, then turned and ran off. I had worked so hard, gaining everything I lacked back then. So why couldn't I hold her in my arms now? Just when I thought I had everything. Why was I still missing something? I stood there, staring in the direction she had run, unable to move. 3 days after that encounter with Emily, I was still in shock, struggling to focus on my work. That's when I received a call from the hospital, and I rushed there as fast as I could. Mom! I burst into the hospital room, only to find my mother lying in bed, with a nurse checking her IVs and other equipment. There was no sense of urgency in the air, and the soft-colored flowers in the basket beside her bed were blooming beautifully. Sarah, your son's here. That's wonderful. I'll come back later, the nurse said to my mom before nodding at me and leaving the room. Once she was gone, I walked over to my mom's side. I got a call from the hospital. Mom smiled warmly at me, showing no signs of the kind of condition that would warrant an emergency call. Oh, really? Maybe it's because I wasn't feeling well earlier. I told them not to call, but they must have been thoughtful. I'm sorry about that. She gave me a slightly embarrassed smile. For some reason, her lightheartedness irritated me. It's been a while. Was it a month ago when you last visited? I'm so happy to see you, Alex. You look tired, though. Are you getting enough sleep? I know work is busy, but you really should take care of yourself. Enough already. If I don't work, I can't pay for this place. I'm doing this for you, so just don't lecture me, okay? I raised my voice more than I intended. I knew my mom was only concerned about me. But my work was, in part, to cover the cost of her hospital bills. So when she commented on my actions, it felt like criticism, and I lashed out. You're right. I'm sorry. It's because you're working so hard that I'm able to stay here. Thank you. She apologized, looking guilty, but even as I felt a pang of guilt myself, I couldn't stop the harsh words from spilling out. I had a lot of work today, and then I got called here. What's the deal, seriously? I'm sorry. But I was really happy you came. Really? I felt an overwhelming irritation. I wasn't sure if I was angry at my mom or myself. I knew I'd been neglecting my visits, using work as an excuse. I knew she must be feeling lonely. And maybe the unresolved feelings from my recent encounter with Emily were making it worse. Consumed by these negative emotions, I felt a sudden urge to blame my mom for everything that had gone wrong. After all, I'd spent years feeling lonely because she was never around. I didn't deserve to be blamed for not visiting for just a month. Realizing where my thoughts were going, I managed to swallow my words at the last moment. I'm going back to work. I stood up, avoiding her gaze. If I didn't leave, I might say something even more hurtful. As I headed toward the door, I heard her say, "Take care," but I didn't turn around as I left the room. Thanks to my quick return and the support from my team, there was no delay in my work. But with thoughts of my mom and Emily lingering in my mind, I couldn't focus. Almost a week had passed since my last visit to see my mom. I knew I should apologize, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling inside me. Unable to bring myself to go see her, I buried myself in work to avoid thinking about it. Then, my phone rang again. It was the hospital. To be honest, my first thought was, again? I hesitated to answer, and the call went to voicemail. I sighed and played the message. "Your mother's condition has suddenly worsened. Please come to the hospital." Though my chest tightened slightly at the news, I dismissed it as nothing serious, remembering the last time I had been called. Still, I couldn't ignore it. I quickly rearranged my schedule and headed to the hospital. It was midday, and the hospital was bustling with people waiting at the reception and billing desks. Everything seemed normal, just like any other day. Or at least, it should have been. But then, "Are you Sarah's son? Your mother has been moved to the ICU." What? ICU? This can't be happening. But she was so full of life just last week, even before that. "Please, stay strong." The nurse's stern voice snapped me back to reality. "Your mother is stable for now, thanks to the quick action of a visitor who noticed the sudden change in her condition. We were able to take appropriate measures in time. Please, follow me." She offered me a reassuring smile as she guided me toward the ICU. "Thank you. I appreciate it." Though my mind was still reeling, her words, "stable," gave me a glimmer of relief as I followed her to the ICU. "Is that Emily?" To my surprise, I saw Emily standing there. "Alex." There was a look of relief on her face when she saw me. "She was the one who noticed your mother's condition," the nurse explained. "What? Really?" "I came to visit and noticed she was struggling, so I immediately called for a nurse," Emily said. "She's been coming to visit Sarah regularly since she was transferred here." Sarah always seemed so happy on the days Emily visited. The nurse added. "I didn't know that." "Wait, were those flowers in my mom's room from you, Emily?" "Yes. I thought it might brighten your mom's day, considering how long she's been in the hospital." The flowers in my mom's room. I remembered how they were regularly changed, with different arrangements and baskets each time. I had assumed they were from my mom's friends or colleagues, so I never thought to ask. But to think that Emily had been the one bringing them. "Emily, thank you so much for everything you've done for my mom. She's safe today because you were there. I really appreciate it." I bowed deeply to her. "Please, Alex, don't bow like that," Emily exclaimed, rushing over to me. When I lifted my head, she was standing close, right beside me. "Emily." "Alex." Her expression was no longer the tense one from before, but the familiar face of Emily that I knew so well. As we gazed into each other's eyes, the nurse let out a soft chuckle. Startled by the sound, both of us looked down in embarrassment, feeling a bit shy. "This isn't the place for that. Please, come inside. Your mother is sleeping now, so please be quiet." Normally, only family members are allowed. But Sarah specifically requested that Emily be allowed in, so Dr. Anderson has granted special permission. The nurse said as she led us into the ICU. "I'm sorry, but visits are limited to about 10 minutes. After that, Dr. Anderson will meet with you, Alex, to discuss the surgery and future treatment options in a separate room," she added before leaving us alone. Emily and I sat in the chairs next to my mom's bed. The room was filled with the sterile sounds of medical equipment, and my mom lay there, connected to various tubes and wires. I let out a sigh of relief when I saw her chest gently rising and falling. Even though I had been told she was sleeping, I couldn't relax until I saw it with my own eyes. Thank goodness. But why did her condition suddenly get so bad? Emily shook her head slowly. The truth is, she's been getting worse bit by bit. But your mom didn't want you to worry. She told me, Alex is busy with work. So I don't want to add to his burden. Please, don't tell him. What? But you knew, didn't you, Emily? Yes. Your mom was so kind to me, even after we started dating. And with my own mom gone, I began to see your mom as a real mother to me. And she treated me like a daughter. Even after we broke up, that didn't change. I'd visit her whenever I could. And we'd talk about all sorts of things, including her condition. I see. Wow. I never knew you two were so close. I had known that my mom cared deeply about Emily and that Emily cherished my mom. But I had no idea they had maintained such a close relationship even after our breakup. I certainly hadn't expected that my mom would confide in Emily about her condition in ways she never did with me. It seems like my mom and you did for each other what I couldn't, I said. Alex. Thank you, Emily. For everything. I smiled at Emily. But her expression twisted in pain. I told your mother about our breakup too, Alex. She just listened quietly and gently patted my back. Just like she did the first time we met, so kind and warm. Back then, I was immature, and I didn't know how to ease your struggles or how to help you. I was scared that I might become a burden to you instead of a support. You were so overwhelmed with college and all those part-time jobs. I felt lost. Hearing this truth from Emily left me speechless. I had always believed she left because I couldn't be a proper boyfriend, because I couldn't offer her anything. That's why I worked so hard to make myself someone worthy of her. I had the status of being a CEO and the wealth that came with it. A job that earned me respect from others. I found a hospital where I could entrust my mom's care with confidence, and I even managed to free up more time in my schedule. I thought I had finally become someone who could stand beside Emily, but I was completely wrong. Your mom was always worried about you, Alex. She'd say, he's just like me, trying to do everything at once and never knowing when to stop. I'm scared he'll push himself too hard and get sick. She was always thinking about you. As Emily shared the things my mom had said, I felt a surge of warmth in my chest. Everything she told me was filled with my mom's love and concern, and it made me realize just how much I had been blind to it. Even though she was going through so much with her treatments, she never complained. She always said, if Alex is working so hard, I need to keep going too, and she'd smile. Seeing that, I realized that this is what a mother's love is: huge, warm, and endlessly deep. Mom. Without realizing it, I reached out and held my mom's hand. Her wrist was even thinner than it had been when she first collapsed, and a sharp pain stabbed through my chest. Mom had always been like this. She put herself last, always smiling to keep me from worrying. But in reality, she had been pushing herself to the point of collapse. I knew that. I had realized it back then. But I was repeating the same mistake. I really was a fool. As I was lost in regret, Emily placed her hand gently on top of mine. Our eyes met. Her expression was calm, her gaze tender. Seeing your mom like that made me regret so much too, Alex. I kept thinking about all the things I should have done or said when my own mom was alive. But I can't go back and change that now. Though, you still have time, don't you? Emily squeezed my hand gently. It's okay, Alex. It's not too late. The moment those words reached me, my vision blurred with tears. Mom. There's still so much I want to do for you, so much I need to say. Please, get better. I'm begging you. I didn't know if my sleeping mother could hear me. But I prayed with all my heart for her recovery. And I felt sure that Emily, sitting beside me, was praying just as hard. Mom's condition had worsened significantly, and Dr. Anderson recommended surgery while she still had the strength. Placing our hopes in Dr. Anderson's promise to do everything he could, the surgery was scheduled and performed right away. Emily and I continued to pray together for my mom's recovery. Our hands tightly clasped in each other's. And the surgery was a success. When Mom finally opened her eyes and our gazes met, I whispered, "Mom, you did great." Emily, sitting beside me, nodded in agreement. "Alex." "Emily." Mom smiled with relief as she looked at us. Seeing that smile, the tears I had been holding back finally burst forth. I wanted to apologize for everything, so I opened my mouth to speak. "Mom, I'm so sorry for everything. I've been so blind to all that you've done for me, putting yourself last, always thinking of me first. And It's okay, Alex. I know I made you go through a lot, ever since the divorce from your father. I should have been more in tune with your feelings. I'm the one who should apologize. I'm sorry, Alex." "Mom." "But I know you care, Alex. I know you've been doing your best for me, that you've been worried about me. And today, you and Emily prayed for me. I'm the luckiest mom in the world." My mother smiled gently as she spoke those words. The moment I saw that warm smile, the floodgates opened, and I began to cry uncontrollably. I wept like a child, sobbing loudly. Looking back, I might have been shedding the tears I had held back since childhood. As I cried, my mother gently stroked my head with her frail hand. It wasn't just me. Both my mother and Emily were also crying. After the three of us had a good cry, a nurse came to check on my mom and, seeing our tear-streaked faces, seemed surprised but said nothing, understanding the situation. When she confirmed that my mother's post-operative condition seemed stable, both Emily and I breathed a sigh of relief. Though we wanted to stay with her longer, we were encouraged to leave so my mom could rest and regain her strength after the surgery. "I'll come back tomorrow," I told her. With tearful eyes, my mom smiled and replied, "I'll be waiting." When we left the hospital, the sky was already dark. We walked side by side toward the parking lot. "Emily, it's only now that I've realized just how wrong I've been about everything," I confessed. Emily stopped walking and turned to face me. "I thought you broke up with me because you were fed up." Back then, I was so overwhelmed, so exhausted, both mentally and physically. The only thing keeping me going was you, Emily. That's why I didn't want to cut back on our time together. But I couldn't do anything for you as a boyfriend, and I felt so worthless. So when you suggested we break up, I understand," Emily whispered. "I never imagined that you suggested breaking up because you were worried about me. I thought that if I just made enough money, I could solve everything with my mom and with you. I threw myself into growing my company, and as it succeeded, I started thinking like the very people I used to despise, the person with status and money is the one who matters. I got caught up in that mindset, thinking I could control everything, but I was wrong." Emily listened quietly as I spoke. She had always been like that. Back when we used to study together before we started dating, when we were a couple, and even now, when I was at my lowest. No matter how awful I was, Emily always listened to me with an open heart, facing me head-on. Back then, when everything was falling apart and I wanted to run away, maybe if I had talked to Emily like this, our future could have been different. But that's just a dream now. But thanks to you and my mom, I've realized what's truly important. So, I'm going to take a step back and think about what I need to do and what I want to do. Once I've sorted it all out, I'll move forward again." Emily smiled softly. "I know you can do it, Alex. I'll be cheering you on." Emily smiled as she said this. As I admired the beauty of her smile, a sharp pain pierced my chest. "I'll be cheering you on." Those words drove home the reality that we could no longer walk this path together. All I could manage was a quiet thank you. "Alex." Emily's voice was filled with concern as she called my name. I forced a smile as I fought back the tears threatening to spill over. "Thank you for being there for my mom and for everything you've done." "I can never thank you enough, Emily. And I know it's a lot to ask, but it would mean the world to me if you could keep visiting my mom. I'll be there too, but I know she'd be so happy to see you." "Of course. Only if it's not too much trouble." "Of course. I'd love to keep visiting your mom. It makes me happy to see her too, so I'll keep coming by." "Thank you, Emily." I had said everything I needed to say. And with that, it felt like this was truly the end. Just as I was about to say my goodbyes, Emily took a step closer to me. The Alex I see now, you're just like the Alex I loved so much back then. What? I have something I want to tell you too, Alex. Will you listen? I was taken aback by her sudden offer, but I nodded. I've always regretted saying let's break up. At the time, I thought it was the best thing to do, but my heart was always elsewhere. Perhaps she was recalling that moment. Emily's eyes wavered, catching the moonlight, which made them glimmer softly. I could never forget you, Alex. I was, of course, worried about your mom, but deep down, I also hoped that maybe we could start over. When we met again, you had changed so much that I got scared and ran away. But now I see that you're still the same Alex, kind and straightforward. Just like before. Emily, does that mean I still love you, Alex? Didn't you realize? With a soft smile, Emily said those words. In that moment, I was reminded of the night we first started dating. The moonlight illuminated her, making her look so beautiful that I couldn't take my eyes off her. I clenched my fist and looked straight into her eyes. I love you too, Emily. I've never been able to forget you. Will you be with me again? Yes. Emily threw herself into my arms. And I gently held her close. You're still the same, Alex, kind, a bit clumsy, but always sincere and someone who looks at me straight in the eyes. You haven't changed at all since the day we met. She whispered as she looked up at me, her teary eyes meeting mine. Our faces drew closer, and we shared a kiss. And just like that, Emily and I began dating again. The next day, when we visited my mom together, she seemed to sense something and said, I'm so happy for you both. I might be biased, but you really do make a perfect couple. She smiled brightly, tears glistening in her eyes. Seeing this, Emily also began to cry. I apologized to my mom for all the terrible things I'd said and promised to make it up to her with all the love and care she deserved. My mom looked a bit surprised but then smiled, looking a little embarrassed. I kept my word, adjusting my work schedule so that I could visit her frequently without neglecting my responsibilities. Although the surgery was successful, my mom's muscle strength had weakened significantly due to her prolonged hospital stays. So she needed some time for rehabilitation. But she had always been a hard worker. Her recovery progressed so well that even Dr. Anderson was surprised. 3 weeks after the surgery, she was able to leave the hospital without any complications. During the time leading up to my mom's discharge, I had been reflecting on my future. I had started my system company mainly as a quick way to gain independence and make money. But the initial spark that led me to study in this field was the desire to create a system that even someone like my mom, who wasn't tech-savvy, could easily use. That was my true passion, and I had lost sight of it, reducing my work to nothing more than a means to earn money. Realizing this, I decided to focus on developing new systems and starting new projects. My goal is to create something that truly helps people in need. When I shared my new direction with Emily, she smiled and said, "That's so like you, Alex. I think it's wonderful." She supported me wholeheartedly. In the early days of my company, there were times when I felt overwhelmed by the uncertainty of the path ahead. But now, with Emily by my side, lighting the way, I could confidently take each step forward. 6 months after my mom's discharge, Emily and I got married. Surrounded by the love and support of so many people, we were truly happy. Well, Emily, I guess I really am your mom now, even if it's just in name. I'm looking forward to everything that's to come. My mom said with a warm smile. Yes. I'm looking forward to it too, Mom. Emily replied, tears welling up in her eyes. Both Emily's father and I were moved to tears by their exchange. Even though they laughed at us for crying, both Emily and my mom had tears streaming down their cheeks too. From now on, Emily and I will support each other as husband and wife, as a family. We both had lonely childhoods and experienced moments of disconnect with our families, but we also knew the depth of the love we received. Because of that, Emily and I are determined to build a warm and loving home together. There will be times when the journey feels overwhelming, times when it would be easy to give up if faced alone. But with someone by your side, it's different, everything feels more manageable. We know that by supporting each other, we can be much stronger than when we were on our own. Huh, is that your kid? I guess kids of middle school graduate really do turn out ugly. I ran into Jessica, a beautiful classmate who bullied me relentlessly in school, at a fancy restaurant. Jessica even directed her nasty comments toward my daughter, Lily, saying that a child is ugly just because her parent didn't graduate high school. How could she say that to a 9-year-old? As I clenched my fists, Lily sighed and said, "Hey, Dad, maybe you should just fire this woman already." Jessica burst out laughing at Lily's remark. Huh, kids of dropouts really are stupid, huh? What did you just say? You, a little brat like you, think you can get me fired? This is why lowlifes who don't know their place are such a pain. Listen, you and I live in completely different worlds. Worlds that never intersect. Got it? Maybe I should shut that sassy mouth of yours for good. Just as I was about to step in and stop her from lunging at Lily, an elderly man appeared, causing Jessica's face to turn pale. My name is John. I was born premature and spent my childhood plagued by illness, never knowing the joys of playing outside. In the housing complex where I lived with my parents, there were many kids around my age. But playing tag would make me cough, and I'd get sick halfway through hide and seek, so I wasn't much fun to play with. Playing with you is no fun at all. Don't come in. Sick kids should just stay home and rest. Even the older kids, who were kind at first, eventually started avoiding me, and the younger kids followed their lead. Before I knew it, nobody talked to me, even when we passed each other in the courtyard. My parents ran a small metalworking factory as a subcontractor for a large company. They employed a few workers and were always busy, rarely coming home, day or night, as deadlines loomed. I spent my days alone, reading books borrowed from the library. Listening to the joyful laughter outside my window, I always felt a deep, hollow loneliness. I'm sorry, John. Whenever my mother came home late from work, she would apologize to me, as if by habit. I would often rub my mother's thin back as she held back tears. Her body, worn out from overwork, was as fragile as mine. When you start school, I'm sure you'll make good friends. Just hold on a little longer, okay? Clinging to that glimmer of hope, I entered elementary school. Maybe, just as my mother said, I could make some friends too. At first, I truly believed that. But as a skinny, frail kid, I immediately stood out in all the wrong ways as soon as I started school. My lanky frame was dressed in hand-me-down clothes from relatives that didn't fit properly. Even the pencils and notebooks I had were mismatched and awkward, like something you'd find in a factory rather than a school. That kid's weird, right? Yeah, he looks like an alien or something. Just walking down the hallway, I was mocked as malnourished and dirty. If I took my eyes off my things, my shoes and gym clothes would end up torn to shreds in the trash with the dust swept up during cleaning. I would quietly wash them in the sink and take them home in a plastic bag. The humiliation and anger would drive me to silent tears in my bed at night. How's school? Are you having fun? My father was a quiet man. He often stayed overnight at the factory during busy times and rarely came home. But whenever we saw each other, he would ask me about school in his quiet way. He used to have a hard time with asthma too, you know. That's why he worries about you so much. Really? He always tells me not to tell you, though. My mother would smile mischievously, her eyes shadowed by dark circles. Seeing how exhausted she was broke my heart. Despite their own fatigue, they always put me first. I never wanted them to know I was being bullied at school. And so, without seeking help from anyone, my lonely 6 years of elementary school came to an end. Then came spring. I thought that maybe once I started middle school, the bullying would at least die down a bit. But that small hope was quickly crushed when the bullying only intensified. Apparently, some of the kids from my elementary school exaggerated stories about me to the new classmates. Before I knew it, they gave me a cruel nickname, a twisted play on the word germ. Could it really be that, just because I was poor and didn't look the part, I became such a target? I soon found out the reason. The ringleader of the bullying against me was a shockingly beautiful girl. Her name was Jessica. Her father was the CEO of a major metal materials company, and she always wore the latest fashions, flashing a charming, idol-like smile at everyone. But behind that pretty face was something terrifying, and not even the head teacher could stand up to her. Her parents were the heads of the PTA as well. She was at the top of the social hierarchy at school. From the moment I ended up in the same class as her, my hellish bullying experience began. Hey! During self-study time, I instinctively looked up and met Jessica's eyes from a seat one desk away. Her beautiful face twisted into a sneer as she pinched her nose dramatically, giving me a bad feeling. Hey, doesn't it smell dirty in here? Especially around that area. Oh, never mind, it's just Germ Boy after all. Her shrill voice echoed in the room, and her entourage laughed alone. The noisy classroom suddenly went silent, and all eyes were on me. Didn't you hear me? I'm talking to you, loser. The room stinks like germs because of you. Hey! Why don't you do everyone a favor and stop breathing? I'm sorry. I looked down, avoiding the stabbing gazes and mocking laughter. The classroom felt like a bed of nails to me. It became a daily routine to apologize endlessly for any harsh words or baseless accusations thrown at me, just to make them stop. I became so afraid of people's stares that I walked with my head down and my shoulders hunched. But I kept going to school because of my parents. Both of them worked tirelessly, day and night. Whenever a defective product was found, or when deadlines were suddenly moved up, they would be rudely awakened, even during their brief sleep, to deal with complaints. It pained me to see my hard-working parents apologizing to unreasonable demands. I didn't want to become like that. I felt that if I, their son, lost my pride, it would snuff out the smiles of the family I loved so much. If I let my spirit become as poor as we were materially, I would be left with nothing at all. And yet, despite my resolve, my spirit eroded bit by bit. Every time I apologized in the face of their cruel words, it wore me down even more. I gradually lost the ability to sleep, and my stomach would ache every morning before school. Then, when my autonomic nervous system became unbalanced and I fell seriously ill, leading to a long hospital stay, I stopped going to school altogether. I used my health as an excuse to escape the bullying, avoiding even the guilt that came with it. After I became truant, I gave up on going to high school and started helping out with my parents' work. The factory needed all the manpower it could get. At first, I handled administrative tasks, but before I knew it, I was hauling heavy loads like the other workers, running around the factory grounds until late at night. I wanted to work hard and ease the burden on my family, but reality was harsh on someone like me, with no education and little understanding of the world. The longtime employees, who knew me well, were warm and treated me like family. But even when I worked to the point of exhaustion, my monthly pay was barely enough. I stopped going to the doctor because the medical bills were too much. I was overwhelmed with anxiety about the future. I had no education, no money to start anything new. And even if I started studying now, what would be the point? Whenever I felt weak, the sneering faces of the neighborhood kids, Jessica, and my classmates would flash through my mind. Days passed in a blur as I pushed my body to its limits, dragging around the weight of my anxieties like chains. It happened while I was anxiously checking the deadline for the next product. Suddenly, a sharp, tearing pain shot through my chest. My strength drained from my body, and I collapsed onto the floor. My chest. I struggled to breathe, gasping for air, unable to take a breath. My mother, holding my convulsing body, screamed, "Somebody! Call an ambulance, quick!" The lack of sleep and the grueling work that stretched late into the night had taken its toll. I was diagnosed with a pneumothorax due to overwork and had to undergo emergency surgery and a hospital stay. The doctors told me I'd need to be hospitalized for a week. "You need to take better care of your body," my longtime doctor said with a hint of anger in his voice when I saw him for the first time in a while. As I looked at the strands of gray hair at his hairline, I realized how much time had passed since my last hospitalization. His stern lectures hadn't changed, but now, I could feel the kindness behind his words that I once only found intimidating. After my morning checkup, I went to the hospital courtyard. There was a small bench next to a flower bed. This had always been my favorite spot at the hospital, where I had spent much of my childhood as a frequent patient. Though it was already past noon, the courtyard was nearly empty, with only a single book left on the bench. Is this someone's forgotten book? I thought as I opened it to check for a name, and I recognized the title. It was a children's book I had read before. Do you want to borrow that? It's a kid's book, but it's pretty good. I turned around at the sound of a clear, confident voice. Standing there was a young woman in a hospital gown and a medical cap. That was the moment I met my future wife. Emily, who was 2 years older than me, was frail like I was and had been friends with books since childhood. Whenever we met, she always had a different book in her hands. She said she was the type who never bought books because once she read them, she remembered most of the content. Her biggest complaint was that the hospital library had run out of books she hadn't read. Watching her lively expressions change in front of me, it was hard to believe she was seriously ill, if not for the hospital gown. She was incredibly knowledgeable, quick-witted, and never flaunted her intelligence, which I found admirable. According to the nurses, her bright personality made her a beacon of light for the children and elderly patients during her long hospital stays. "So, you're working at your parents' factory now, huh, John?" "Yeah. I couldn't go to school. And I've been so busy with work at the factory that I haven't had time to study at all." "What's that supposed to mean? Are you saying I'm lucky to have free time?" "No, that's not what I meant." As I panicked, she flashed a refreshing smile. "I'm just teasing you. I'm sorry. But I kind of get it. You have this look on your face like you want to change but don't know how." She had read my troubled thoughts so easily that it made me break out in a cold sweat. "You're very perceptive. Spending so much time here, I started to pick up on these things. Everyone here is struggling with something." A cool breeze swept through the courtyard. Emily gazed at the flowers swaying in the flowerbed with a serious expression. "My job is to stay alive." "Your job is to stay alive?" "Yes. To breathe as long as possible and make the most of each day. And to not worry my family." "Emily. And you have something too, something you were born to do." "Do you really think so?" "Of course. Birds have the sky to fly in, and fish have the sea to swim in, right?" You're right. You have your own path too, even if you can't see it yet." Then came the day of her discharge. "I never thought I'd be the first one to leave," Emily said with a bright expression as she finished loading her luggage into the taxi. The fresh blue dress she wore suited her far better than the pale blue hospital gown. Well, I've got a few more chronic conditions to deal with," I replied. After a few more words of farewell, she said, "I'm going back to college to catch up on what I missed during my leave. It might take a while, but I've made up my mind to see it through to the end. What about you? Have you found something you want to do?" Pushed by her earnest gaze, I confessed my true feelings. "To be honest, I'm still not sure. I've never really thought about what I want to do before." "I see." The approaching farewell made it hard to speak. But there was something I absolutely had to tell her. If I let this moment slip away, I knew I would regret it for the rest of my life. For the first time in my life, I felt this strongly about something. "Emily, if I do have a path, and if it really leads somewhere free and open, I want to walk beside you on it." "What?" When I finally mustered the courage to look up, I saw Emily's eyes wide in surprise, as if she couldn't believe what she just heard. "Why?" "I have a chronic illness, and I might not have much time left, you know?" "So do I." "You were the one who said we all have a path. So now, you have to take responsibility for that." "Responsibility, huh?" You've really learned to speak up. Maybe I've learned that from you." "I see. That makes me happy. Okay then, let's start by being friends." She gently took my outstretched hand. With tears in the corners of her eyes, Emily smiled like a blooming flower. That was the moment when my life began to take on meaning. After being discharged, the first thing I did was expressing my gratitude to my parents and everyone at the factory. While I was resting, they had all worked tirelessly to keep the factory running. One of my seniors sent me messages to cheer me up, while a colleague brought me my favorite snacks. I had been so caught up in my misery that I failed to see the warmth and kindness around me. I was determined to express my gratitude for all their support. I also shared the dream I had formed during my hospital stay. I told them about meeting Emily and how she had given me a new dream. It might sound foolish, but even someone like me has found a path I want to follow. I don't care if people laugh at me. I was ready for them to laugh at me, but as I spoke, not a single person did. Isn't this the first time you've ever said you wanted to do something? If there's anything we can do to help, just say the word. We're practically family, after all. With the understanding and support of my parents and co-workers, I decided to take the high school equivalency exam. Whenever I had spare time, I studied, and on scheduled days, Emily would tutor me on the parts one didn't understand. On days when I couldn't avoid overtime, my colleagues would give me a nudge near the end of the shift. Go on, get out of here. You've got studying to do, don't you? Since the day I set that goal, I couldn't afford to waste a single day. After all, Emily's condition continued to fluctuate, with her health improving one day and declining the next. Once I passed the exam, I moved on to preparing for college entrance exams. Honestly, this was the hardest part of my studies. With advice from those around me, I desperately searched for an affordable and well-rounded university. During that time, I encountered countless unfamiliar words, formulas, and diagrams, information that overwhelmed me to the point of nausea. Yet, I pushed myself to cram every bit of knowledge, from the basics to the advanced, into my brain. And the result of all my sleepless nights and relentless studying was success. I passed. I could hardly believe it. I thought for sure I would have to repeat the process since I had barely attended school. Forgetting to even turn off my computer, I rushed to the factory where my parents were. When I arrived, despite it being a day off, I found a large group of employees gathered at our home. In the break room, there were large plates of elaborate dishes that my mother and Emily had apparently prepared together. I never imagined they would all be celebrating for me. Everyone, you did all this for me, thank you so much. Don't worry about the money. You'll pay us back when you've made it big. Now, get back to work starting tomorrow. With those words, a firm pat landed on my back. The group photo, taken with my tear-streaked face, is now a cherished memory. As the cherry blossoms bloomed, I found myself a brand new college student and a new dad, while Emily became a new mom. We didn't have a wedding ceremony, as per Emily's wishes. The physical strain was too much, and she had scolded me, saying, "If you have time for that, you should be studying." So, my time in college was completely dedicated to studying, and the only gift I could give her was a simple, inexpensive ring. But despite everything, Emily gave me the most precious gift of all. After enduring severe morning sickness and a difficult delivery, she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl who resembled her. We named her Lily. Balancing studies and childcare was overwhelming, but with the help of our families, we managed. I often found myself soothing Lily while reading textbooks, only to fall asleep together. There were countless times when I cried along with her, not knowing why she was upset. Even after I graduated and secured the job I had longed for, there was no time to rest. Most of what I had studied didn't apply to the real world. No matter how hard I had worked at my desk, the practical challenges were completely different. Every day reminded me that I was starting from scratch. When I returned home late at night, I would find my wife and daughter sleeping hand in hand in bed. The sight of their innocent faces washed away the exhaustion of the day. I would place my hand over theirs and savor the happiness of the moment. But those happy days didn't last long. One evening, after returning home earlier than usual, I carried my daughter, who had fallen asleep from playing, to her bed. As we sat down to have tea together, Emily spoke. "I'm going to be hospitalized again the day after tomorrow," she said. "What?" "My mom's coming to help for a while, so I'm sorry, but I'll need you to take care of everything else." "Wait a minute. Don't tell me, it's, again?" "Yes. The tumor has grown. I've been having terrible headaches lately, and the doctor said I need to be admitted immediately." "No. Why didn't you tell me something so important?" "I'll take a leave of absence first thing tomorrow. I'll be with you for the appointment." "Stop." Emily's voice, low and firm, was something I had never heard before. "Don't underestimate me. Do you know how long I've been dealing with this illness?" Her voice trembled slightly. "When we first met, I told you, didn't I? What my job is. To live. You taught me that." "Yes. So, I'll be fine. You just make sure to take care of Lily first." With those words, the strong-willed Emily left the house without showing a hint of weakness. As she began her battle with the illness, I entrusted the household to my mother-in-law. Because of my irregular work hours in the antibody lab, I barely had any time at home. It was rare that I could finish work on time, and on my occasional days off, I was often called in for emergency shifts. The moment I sat on the sofa after coming home, the tension would release. And I'd realize just how exhausted I was, so much so that I could barely lift my arms. Eating instant noodles after work became a routine. The taste didn't matter anymore. I bought the same brand in bulk out of sheer habit. Eating and then immediately passing out. If my wife saw this, she would definitely scold me for such a lifestyle. Seeing the pile of discarded instant noodle cups, my daughter, Lily, now in 5th grade, started preparing meals for me to eat later. The gentle flavor of her homemade omelet brought back memories of my wife's cooking, which I hadn't tasted in a long time. Lily, you're such a great cook. With your food, Dad can keep going forever. One day, as I was praising her cooking like usual, large tears began to roll down Lily's cheeks. What are you talking about? You just don't get it, Dad. If you collapse too, I'll be all alone at home. That's why I want you to at least eat something nutritious. Please, I'm begging you, don't push yourself any further. Her desperate grip on me made me realize the truth. Looking at myself after a bath, I saw a gaunt, pale figure. No wonder she was worried. Remember? Breathe as long as possible and live each day with joy. And don't make your family worry. My wife's cheerful voice from when we first met echoed in my mind. That's right, I had promised to protect them. I'm sorry for making you worry. But don't worry. Neither your mom nor I will ever leave you alone. As I hugged the sobbing Lily, I renewed my vow to protect my precious family. After a long while, I managed to take some time off, and I decided to take Lily to a high-end restaurant. The visit was initially for a work-related meeting, but the discussion wrapped up quickly, leaving us to enjoy the meal. Even though we were better off now, I still wasn't used to such formal settings. The dishes were as exquisite as their reputation, with beautifully presented appetizers, and Lily and I exchanged smiles. We couldn't help but smile together. After eating something like this, you won't want to eat home-cooked meals anymore, will you? No way. Home-cooked meals are still the best for me. A cough from the young waiter brought me back to reality. Apparently, I had spoken a bit too loudly. Sorry. I quickly glanced around. The restaurant, with its semi-private rooms, maintained an elegant silence. Good thing we're in a semi-private room. But really, Dad, you don't need to be so apologetic all the time. You should carry yourself with more confidence. Sorry, Lily. There you go again, apologizing right away. I chuckled inwardly at her puffed-up cheeks. Who would have thought that the same word, sorry, could feel so different depending on the situation, filling me with such contentment. Wow, that was delicious. This place is amazing, right? Yeah. Let's come again. So, Dad, what are you going to do about that offer? Well, I'm thinking of turning it down. My priority is to protect you and your mom. I see. Yeah, that's the right choice. We enjoyed a blissful evening, but just as we were leaving the restaurant, it happened. Well, if it isn't. I knew I recognized you. You're Germ Boy, aren't you? A shrill voice suddenly pierced the quiet night. I turned to see a woman who had caught my eye inside the restaurant earlier, pointing at me and shouting. Even in the dim light, her strong old beauty was unmistakable, and I felt the blood drain from my face. There was no way I could forget. Germ Boy, the nickname that had haunted me since middle school. You're so filthy and disgusting that Germ Boy suits you perfectly. Right, everyone? The days when I had to endure Jessica's cruel taunts, surrounded by classmates who looked down on me, came rushing back. Seeing her again, I realized her hateful beauty hadn't changed at all. In fact, the condescending expression on her face seemed even more intimidating now. Fortunately, her group, having finished their meal, had dispersed, leaving us alone in the empty street. But now, Jessica, slightly drunk, was eyeing my daughter next to me with the same lack of regard. Is that your kid? I guess kids of middle school graduate really do turn out ugly. It's surprising to run into someone who quit school halfway in a place like this. My daughter, standing beside me, showed no signs of fear and faced Jessica, who was the same age as me, with calm defiance. Excuse me, what do you think you're saying to my dad? You have no manners at all. What? What's wrong with calling a middle school graduate what they are? The one who lacks education here is you, old lady. Old lady. I can't believe it. What a rude little brat. Kids of middle school graduate really have no upbringing. How disgusting. At Jessica's vicious words, Lily's face went completely blank. Seeing this, a chill ran down my spine. Why did my daughter's quiet demeanor feel more terrifying than Jessica's raging anger? Aren't you that lady from Kando TV? How does a brat like you know anything about me? Lily continued, unfazed by Jessica's sudden unease. I see you a lot on Kando TV's social media. You post quite a bit, don't you? Lily pulled out her phone and opened Kando TV's social media page. Sure enough, Jessica frequently appeared in the posts. Oh, really? Well, I'm in charge of PR at Kando TV, so I guess I stand out. I work at a company that has nothing to do with middle school graduate losers like you. You must be jealous, right? It seemed Jessica was eager to boast about her job. The mention of Kando TV made her eyes light up with pride. Ha! Hey, Dad, maybe you should just have this woman fired. I don't want to do business with a company that employs someone like her. Lily's exasperated comment made Jessica burst out laughing. Ha! Kids of middle school graduates really are stupid. You think you can get me fired? This is why lowlifes who don't know their place are so annoying. Listen, you and I live in completely different worlds. Worlds that never intersect. Got it? What? No, I don't get it. You're dumb and mean. Just because you're rich and educated doesn't mean you can say whatever you want. Lily, that's enough. When Lily gets angry, her language becomes sharp. She shows no mercy, even when dealing with Jessica. Jessica, her pride wounded, turned red with rage. What? You insolent little brat. Maybe I should shut that mouth of yours. As Jessica furiously lunged toward Lily, I moved to intervene, but before I could, a voice cut through the tension. What's going on here? An older man in a suit appeared, causing Jessica's eyes to widen in shock. Mr. Thompson. Lily quickly stepped forward and spoke. We were just having dinner with Mr. Thompson from your company. What? Jessica looked back and forth between us and Mr. Thompson, utterly bewildered. Mr. Thompson, this can't be true, right? What are you talking about? This is Lulu from the kids' balanced cooking class. Mr. Thompson's words left Jessica stunned, unable to believe what she was hearing. Lulu, as in, from that kid's balanced cooking class. Jessica seemed at a loss for words, standing there dumbfounded as my daughter smiled sweetly at her. Lily, under the name Lulu from the kids' balanced cooking class, had become quite well known. During my wife's battle with illness, Lily had taken photos of the meals she made for me and posted them on social media. Her nutritious recipes quickly gained attention, and now she was a popular child culinary expert with over 2 million followers. Her simple, love-filled meals, designed for busy parents struggling to provide balanced nutrition, offered a unique theme that resonated with many. Young people and homemakers, in particular, eagerly started replicating my daughter's recipes. The hashtag Lulu became widely recognized on social media. For privacy reasons, she never showed her face, but the name Lulu had become a household name across Japan. Wait a minute. If you're Lulu, then that means your father is. Yeah. After all that, I went back to school and became a doctor. Since my profession was included in Lulu's profile, it wasn't surprising that she knew. To be honest, I was still amazed by it myself. Who would have thought that someone once treated like a germ would grow up to become a doctor? And not just any doctor, I specialize in neurosurgery. Every day is still a struggle as I cram the latest medical knowledge into my head. But I've done it all with the hope of curing my beloved Emily's illness. Regarding the matter we discussed earlier, we would greatly appreciate your consideration. Mr. Thompson and his team asked deeply me and my daughter. At today's dinner meeting, the president of Kando TV himself had requested to do a feature on our family. We'll have to decline. Lily. I was taken aback as Lily decisively announced her response. Do you know what this woman said about my dad earlier? She called him a middle school dropout germ. She's been mocking him the whole time. I don't want to do business with a company that employs someone who would insult the person I respect most. What did you say? What lies are you spewing? Shut up. Where's your proof? Show me proof, or I'll sue you for defamation." Without hesitation, Lily pulled out her phone from her pocket. "I've been recording your insults. Maybe I should post it on my social media?" Even in the face of Jessica's furious outburst, Lily remained unshaken. I couldn't help but think that she truly took after Emily. Jessica's face turned pale. "Oh? Your face looks a bit more ashen than before. And your skin is breaking out too. You should really be getting more vitamin A from broccoli and carrots. Want me to send you some recipes? I can DM them to you." Jessica slumped to the ground, defeated. "I deeply apologize for the unpleasant experience you've had today, John. We will take strict disciplinary action against Jessica. So please reconsider allowing the interview," Mr. Thompson pleaded, turning to me. "What? Mr. Thompson?" Jessica looked up at him with desperate eyes. But Mr. Thompson silenced her with a stern command to keep quiet, leaving her speechless. Leaving the situation in Mr. Thompson's hands, I finally turned away and walked down the road leading home with Lily. In the end, we politely declined Kando TV's request for the interview. Even without Jessica's behavior, I would have refused. Emily is still fighting her illness, and for me, nothing is more important than my family, Emily, Lily, and everyone around us. However, if our family's journey could one day offer support to someone else, that would be a wonderful thing. Thankfully, Emily's condition is improving. If things continue to go well, the day we can live together as a family again might not be far off. Later, the incident Jessica caused at the TV station became a significant issue within the company. Despite Mr. Thompson personally requesting the feature on Lulu, Jessica ruined everything. As a result, she was transferred to a subsidiary, but even there, rumors spread, and she eventually resigned. Looking back now, I realize that the long years of bullying were just the prelude to meeting the family I love so dearly. What matters most is to cherish the people in front of me. To breathe as long as possible, to live each day with joy. And to not make your family worry. These are the guiding principles Emily taught me. If I hold on to them, I believe I can overcome whatever lies ahead. If you hadn't dropped out of school, Dad, your life might have turned out differently. I recall Lily's words, spoken suddenly on our way home. Do you regret the way things are now? The way her brows furrowed and her eyes glistened with tears tugged at my heart. One day, if I'm ever asked in an interview, no matter who in the world asks, I think I'll proudly smile and say, even if I could choose a different path, I wouldn't hesitate to become a middle school graduate. Because I know that path would lead me straight to meeting Emily and Lily. I'm so sorry for being late. I burst into the conference room, ready to drop to my knees in apology. How long are you going to make us wait? We might as well call this deal off right now. I've really done it this time. My mind goes completely blank. But right now, all I can do is bow my head and beg for forgiveness, pleading for this negotiation to somehow continue smoothly. The fate of our company is at stake. Everything I've worked for up until now hinges on this very moment. What have I done? But I don't regret it. Because the person I helped was the one I had once loved. The moment she saw me, her eyes welled up with tears, and she said, "It's not a dream, is it? All right, with this much time, I can still make it." I checked the time on the watch I bought with my first bonus after starting work, and I felt relieved, knowing I'd still arrive with time to spare. My name is Michael. Today, I'm feeling more nervous than usual as I head to meet our client, Company K. The reason for my anxiety is that Company K is a major player in the elderly care products industry, consistently ranking first or second in market share, and after years of building connections and numerous presentations, our company finally secured this negotiation. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say our company's future hinges on this deal. If the negotiation goes well, we're sure to get a nice bonus. It would be the biggest achievement since our company was founded. I come from a single-parent family, and my mom worked as a caregiver to put me through college. While I only managed to get into an obscure third-rate university due to a life filled with part-time jobs since high school, I have confidence that the people skills and tenacity I developed through my jobs in the service industry give me an edge over graduates from elite universities. As I got off the train at the station nearest to Company K, I thought I'd grab an iced coffee from a convenience store just off the main road to shield myself from the afternoon sun. But as I was walking, I saw something on the sidewalk ahead. A bag? What is that? I wondered, but I was too busy going over the negotiation plan in my head to pay much attention until I passed by it. Then I was startled. It was a person. A young woman was collapsed, leaning against a hedge. I rushed over and tried to call out to her. "Are you okay? Can you hear me?" There was no response at all. Maybe she'd been in an accident. I knew it wasn't wise to move her without knowing what happened, but I couldn't just leave her there without checking if she was okay. So, I carefully lifted her up. Still, there was no reaction. Seeing her face, I called out a name I hadn't said in years. "Emily." How many years has it been since I last said that name? She was my old girlfriend, Emily Thompson. A wave of nostalgia washed over me, but now wasn't the time for reminiscing. I didn't know what had happened to her, but she was unconscious. It was a matter of urgency. I pulled out my phone, checked my location via GPS, and immediately called for an ambulance. Fortunately, the ambulance arrived in less than 10 minutes, and the paramedics rushed over with a stretcher. I explained her condition when I found her, told them she was a friend named Emily, but that I didn't know her current address. Since I knew her, they suggested I ride along in the ambulance, and I, worried about her, quickly agreed. Inside, the paramedics worked efficiently, and all I could do was hold her hand tightly and call her name. But why is she here in Tokyo? That thought suddenly crossed my mind. We had dated during our college years. After that, I started working for a company in Tokyo, while Emily took a job back home, and we began a long-distance relationship. In the beginning, we stayed in frequent contact, but after a while, communication from her side suddenly stopped. I got busy with work, and our relationship quietly faded away. I convinced myself that the distance had made her uneasy, and maybe she'd found someone she liked more than me. I tried to forget about her, but I couldn't forget her. I kept thinking about her, dragging those feelings with me for so long that I thought I could never love anyone else again. Just as I was getting lost in those thoughts, feeling a bit sentimental, the ambulance arrived at a hospital. She was carried inside and taken to a treatment room for examination. Then, it suddenly hit me, I remembered something terrible. Damn it! I rushed outside the hospital and checked my phone, only to find a flood of missed calls. Things were definitely looking bad. So I quickly went to the emergency room reception and explained that I was an acquaintance of the woman who had just been brought in. I told them I had to leave because I was in the middle of work. I promised I would come back as soon as I finished, and with a heavy heart, I rushed off to Company K. The hospital was only a few minutes away by taxi. I apologized for being late at the reception desk of Company K, and as I was led to the conference room, I saw my manager, Robert, waiting in the hallway. As soon as he spotted me, he began speaking rapidly, though without raising his voice. "Hey! What happened? You didn't answer any calls, and I thought you might have been in an accident. What on earth happened?" I didn't hide the reason for my delay. "I'm really sorry for being late. On my way from the station, I found a woman I know collapsed on the street. I called an ambulance and accompanied her to the hospital. I forgot to call, and I really don't know how to apologize. Whether Robert believed me or not, he just said, "Well, the client is waiting for us, so make sure you do your best." And we both entered the conference room. To cut to the chase, the negotiation was a success. What made me happiest was that all our hard work had finally been recognized. But little did I know that this feeling of accomplishment would soon be shattered. Back at the office, I was summoned by Mr. Fletcher, the CEO, and told I would be removed from the project. "I'm really glad we managed to succeed. Great job, everyone. Now, starting today, Michael will be stepping down from the project. This is my decision, but it reflects the consensus of the entire company. Thank you for your efforts up until now, Michael. Travis will be taking over." "Travis, I'm counting on you." Travis, who had taken over my position, grinned and said, "Thank you very much. I think Mr. Fletcher made the right call. We can't have someone who skips such an important meeting representing the company. It's a matter of trust." Travis, who had always treated me like a rival, took this opportunity to lay into me. Feeling completely unjust, I glared at Travis and confronted Mr. Fletcher. "Excuse me, do you know how much effort I put into this project, Mr. Fletcher?" Travis, mocking me, chimed in. "Before being a professional, you failed at being a decent human. Showing up late without even a call? I thought you'd chickened out and run away. And look at you, acting all high and mighty just because your sales numbers are good, despite coming from some no-name third-rate university." Yes, I graduated from a so-called third-rate university. But that has nothing to do with this, does it? I admit I was wrong for not making a call, and I truly apologize for that. But the negotiation was successful. Do you have any idea how much I've invested in this? I've worked my way up from the bottom. Unlike you who have been on the fast track your whole life. I've worked 10, no, 100 times harder than you have. And yet, hearing our argument, Robert sided with Travis. But Michael, Mr. Fletcher didn't decide this based solely on this incident. 6 months ago, during the contract with Company S, we had to cover for your mistake, too. You almost caused the deal to fall apart when you upset their executive. And it was Travis's quick thinking that saved the day. I heard you even tried to take credit for that. Travis chimed in, pretending to reminisce. "Oh, yeah, you went around bragging like it was all you're doing, didn't you?" Without my quick thinking, that contract would have been dead in the water. I had no idea about any of this. Actually, that wasn't my fault. I wasn't directly involved in the Company S project. I had only given advice to Alice, one of Travis's team members, so I could focus on the Company K deal. Travis and Alice must have spread these lies. Damn it! I'd been set up. Realizing that anything I said now would just sound like excuses, I kept quiet. Mr. Fletcher, looking at me for a moment, then said, "Michael, you'll be contacted later with further instructions. For now, stay at home and wait. This isn't just about today's incident. I've had concerns about your attitude toward your colleagues for a while. But today confirmed it for me. I had high expectations of you, and I'm disappointed." Hearing Mr. Fletcher's words, my mind went blank. Michael, you really screwed up this time. Looks like you're definitely getting fired. Thanks for everything. But the company will be just fine without you. Rest in peace. Rest in peace, huh? Travis and Alice's mocking words barely registered in my mind. Feeling utterly defeated, as if all my hard work had been for nothing, I suddenly thought of Emily. That's right, Emily. When I left the hospital, The nurse had told me she'd be fine with some rest, but I couldn't stay still. I rushed to the hospital where she had been taken. At the reception desk, I was informed that she had regained consciousness and was now in her room. As I approached, I could see through the open door that Emily was sitting up in bed. Surprised, I called out to her from the hallway. "Are you okay to be up already?" Startled by my sudden voice, Emily turned to look at me and, seeing my face, she smiled. "Michael." Yeah, it's me. I knew it. It really is you, Michael. I thought I heard your voice in my dreams. So, you really were by my side. The nurse told me a man had accompanied me. Thank you for helping me. Luckily, I didn't get seriously hurt. I guess I just got a bit dizzy from being so tired. Must have scared you, huh? Hearing from her that she wasn't seriously injured, I felt relieved and shared my surprise at seeing her here in Tokyo. I never expected to see you here. She looked at me with disbelief and continued. No. I meant my face. That's when I noticed a large bruise stretching from her temple down her cheek. It wasn't there before. Emily looked down, trying to hide the injury, and began to tell me about a painful event that had happened without my knowing. The year after you left for Tokyo, there was a fire at my parents' house. I was unharmed, but my father died shielding me from a collapsing beam. I got burned on my face in the process, and it's been like this ever since. Seeing her smile sadly, I was at a loss for words. While I had lost contact with Emily, she had gone through such a terrible ordeal. And here I was, feeling sorry for myself, thinking she had just moved on and left me behind. I tried to cheer her up a little. Emily, I'm so sorry about your dad, but I'm really glad you're okay. And honestly, until you mentioned it just now, I didn't even notice the scar on your face. Maybe realizing I wasn't lying, Emily burst out laughing. Really? You didn't notice? No way. How could you be so clueless? Maybe it's because it's not as noticeable as you think. You haven't changed at all. And by that, I mean you're still as cute as ever. Though, to be honest, you've also grown more mature and, well, even more beautiful. It's kind of embarrassing. I've always liked your face. But I fell in love with your kind nature, the way you always put others before yourself. Really? Do I really come off like that? Seeing the disbelief on her face, I decided to share a story I had never told anyone before about why I fell for her. Back when we were in college, remember how I was a scholarship student from a single-parent household and was working 2 jobs, day and night? Just to get by? Yeah, I remember. I used to wonder why someone who looked like they were just messing around was working so many jobs. Wait, you thought I was messing around? I was the most serious, struggling student ever. I meant how you looked. I had never realized people saw me that way. I continued with my story. So, one day, I was so exhausted that I overslept and missed the final lecture, the last one. Oh, yeah, I remember that. And that day of all days, it was Professor Williams's class, the strict one who'd automatically fail anyone caught cheating. Yeah, you definitely couldn't skip that one. As the nostalgic conversation continued, Emily's voice seemed to brighten. So, back then, we weren't even dating, just acquaintances from the same seminar. But you went to the professor's office to explain why I was absent, saying you'd take responsibility for me and asking if he could let me continue attending the lectures. I was shocked when Professor Williams told me later. He even teased me, saying I'd found a great wife. What? he could joke like that? Yeah, I didn't know either. But until then, I just thought you were a sweet, gentle girl, and after that, seeing you stand up like that, how could I not fall in love? I felt a little embarrassed sharing this secret reason why I fell for her. With a single sentence I said to Emily, I realized I wasn't ready to let go of these feelings. I have to stay in the hospital for a while to rest, but if nothing else comes up, I'll be discharged soon. After that, I plan to stay around here for about another week. Not wanting to miss this chance, I told her, I'll come see you again. Noticing the intensity in my gaze, she fidgeted with her hands on the blanket and softly replied, Yeah, I'd like that. I'll be waiting. It felt like our first date all over again. We were both too shy to look at each other. The next day, I was rudely awakened by a phone call from the company, formally notifying me that I had been fired. Everything I had built up was suddenly destroyed, and while I was vaguely thinking about what to do next, I realized there was no time to feel sorry for myself. To keep living, I needed a job first. I decided I had to start looking for a new job. 3 days later, I received a message from Emily saying she had been discharged from the hospital. She asked if we could meet the next day, and since I had plenty of free time after getting fired, I was more than happy to say yes. When I arrived at our meeting place, Emily was already there, and she greeted me with a smile. Sorry for the sudden invitation. Is everything okay with your work today? Not wanting her to worry, I answered in a deliberately cheerful voice. Oh, yeah. We just finished a big project, and I hadn't taken any days off for a while, so I had a lot of vacation days piled up. HR has been pestering me to use them, so I finally took a break. Hearing that, she looked relieved. We walked through the city together. We stopped at a store where she wanted to browse some accessories and enjoyed seasonal fruit juice from a stand. It felt like a date from our college days, a simple, happy time. Emily seemed delighted and said with a smile, I've always dreamed of walking around Tokyo with you like this. After we started our long-distance relationship, you only came back to visit a few times, and I never got to come here. I really wanted to visit you in Tokyo, you know. You didn't know that, did you? I had no idea she wanted to come to Tokyo for a date with me. She had always made time for me, working around my schedule. She must have been waiting, knowing how busy I was in Tokyo. The more I realized how thoughtful she had been, the more I loved her. Even though it took so long, I was glad to make her dream come true this way. As I was thinking about this, Travis, dressed in a suit, probably on his way to a meeting, suddenly appeared in front of me. Hey, Michael. What are you doing here? Oh. Travis. Travis looked back and forth between Emily and me and said, Out with a girl on a weekday afternoon, huh? Must be nice. Oh, right, you're unemployed now. Thanks to you, I got a promotion. What? Emily let out a surprised voice. I hadn't told her I was unemployed. Let's go. Not wanting him to say anything more to her, I took her hand, trying to leave the scene. But just then, Travis grabbed my shoulder and shouted, Wait a minute. He then leaned in closer to Emily, scrutinizing her face, and said as if he had discovered something amusing, Whoa! What is this? This chick looks like a freak. Hey, don't tell me you got fired from your job because you were late saving this monster. You? Unable to hold back, I grabbed him by the collar. You can say whatever you want about me, but don't you dare insult her. Apologize to her. What? Why are you getting so worked up? It's annoying. Don't act all tough just because you're with some freakish girl. I was about to punch Travis when Emily, with surprising strength, pulled me back and said, "Stop it. Michael. I'm fine, really. This kind of thing happens all the time, I'm used to it. So, please, just stop. It's okay. Don't get so heated over something like this. Can't even take a joke, huh? You two losers, an unemployed guy and a freak, are perfect for each other. Have a nice life." Feeling awkward after Emily's intervention, Travis muttered under his breath as he walked away. My insides were still boiling with rage. I felt ashamed of my inability to do anything and apologized to Emily. "I'm sorry." Emily looked at me, confused, and said, "Why are you apologizing? I'm the one who should be saying sorry." Her grip on my arm tightened. She continued, "I kind of sensed things weren't going well for you. I was shocked to hear you got fired. But you were trying to act cheerful like you always do when things are tough. That's just how you are. I've known that since back then. I could tell you were really hurting." I was surprised that Emily had seen right through me. The fact that she remembered this quirk of mine and kept it to herself out of kindness made me realize I could never match her. It was for reasons like this that I had fallen for her. Then, I noticed that her hand, which was holding my arm, was trembling slightly. I wondered how deeply Emily had been hurt by Travis's cruel words. Overwhelmed by my feelings, I found myself embracing her tightly. She slowly nestled her cheek against my chest and began to speak in a trembling voice. "I'm sorry, Michael. I'm used to this. It happens all the time. I'm okay." I tightened my arms around her and said, "Don't get used to it. I'll protect you. I'll shield you from every cruel word, from anything that hurts you. You don't need to get used to it, let me protect you." We stayed like that for a while. Then, she slowly moved in my arms, lifted her face, and, already having stopped crying, took a deep breath and said, as if convincing herself, "I'm done running away. I don't want to let go and regret it anymore." Seeing the determined look in her eyes, I thought once again how beautiful Emily was. A week later, my former workplace was in an uproar. Samuel, the executive director, rushed into the CEO's office with a flustered expression. "Mr. Fletcher, this is serious. Look at the news. Turn on the TV." The news reported a sudden change in the CEO of Company K. "Hey, what's going on here? We haven't heard anything from Company K." "Travis, you're in charge. Weren't you informed of anything beforehand?" Robert, equally clueless, demanded answers from Travis. "Hey, Travis, what's going on?" Travis, who knew nothing, was flustered and panicked. "I swear, I had no idea. This is all news to me." "Oh, wait, the press conference is starting. The new CEO is about to appear." The announcement of the CEO change from Company K early that morning had thrown everyone into chaos. Naturally, Travis's company, which was one of Company K's major clients, was caught off guard. Unable to respond to something they hadn't been informed of. Calls for confirmation rang endlessly from subcontractors and competitors, and there were even suggestions to temporarily shut down the lines. Meanwhile, on TV, the press conference for Company K's new CEO was about to begin, and everyone in the office watched the screen with bated breath. The male host greeted the audience and began explaining the sudden leadership change. It was announced that the former CEO, Mr. Nelson, would retire to the position of chairman, and that his retirement was not due to any health issues or other negative reasons. Travis, eagerly waiting to see who the new CEO was, watched as a figure ascended the stage at the host's cue, and was so shocked he couldn't utter a word. "I'm Emily Thompson, and I have been appointed as the new CEO of Company K." She spoke slowly and politely, but with a tone that conveyed strength and determination. One of the reporters asked, "What is your relationship with Chairman Nelson?" "Chairman Nelson is my father." "What?" When Emily proposed this change to me, she explained the following. She and Chairman Nelson were technically parent and child by marriage. Chairman Nelson had been well known both inside and outside the industry as a lifelong bachelor, so I never knew he had gotten married. Emily's parents and Chairman Nelson had been friends since their university days, always together as a trio. However, when the fire broke out at Emily's house, her father died. In their time of need, Chairman Nelson stepped in and said, "His family is like my own," and took care of them. Afterward, Chairman Nelson and Emily's mother got married, making him her stepfather. She told me that every time she saw the scars from the fire, she felt sadness and wondered, why me, sinking into a self-deprecating mindset. She had been holed up at home for a long time and, whenever she did go out, was subjected to stares of curiosity and pity, which made her afraid of the outside world. Reuniting with me seemed to have given her the courage to step back into the light again. She said she wanted to become a CEO who could empathize with each employee, using her painful experiences to help others. When Emily's press conference ended, the room filled with applause and cheers. Back at the office, as they watched with bated breath, Robert turned to Travis, whose face had turned pale. "We weren't told about the change in CEO or that he had a daughter. We can't just sit around. Travis, we need to go greet her immediately." "Hey, Travis, why are you standing there in a daze? We need to move quickly." Watching the press conference from a distance, with tears welling up in my eyes, my phone suddenly rang. Wondering who could be calling at such an important time, I checked the screen and, ironically, saw Travis's name displayed. I hesitated for a moment but decided to take the call, thinking it was an opportunity. "Hello? What do you want?" "Hey, it's me, Travis." "Sounds like a scam call." "Hey, don't make fun of me." "The new CEO of Company K, Emily Thompson, she's the woman you were with in the city, right?" "Yeah, the very woman you insulted as a monster." "Come on, don't say that." It was just a figure of speech, not what I really meant. "I was just jealous of you flirting with such a great girl. That's all." Travis was spouting his usual nonsense. I really can't stand him. I prompted him to get to the point. "So, what do you want?" "I'm busy. If it's nothing important, I'm hanging up." "Wait. Please. As a favor to an old colleague, could you help introduce her to our company?" I knew it would be something like this, so I replied bluntly. "What? No way. It's impossible. You guys better be prepared for what's coming." "What do you mean? Did your company get any notice about the CEO change?" "No, right? That's what I'm saying. At worst, you're going to lose your contract. Goodbye. Don't call me again." I thought I heard Travis's desperate voice on the other end, but I ignored it and hung up. I must have looked really cold after hanging up the phone. Emily, who had just finished her press conference, noticed and asked me with concern in her voice, "Was that a call? Who was it?" I replied as if it was nothing, not wanting to trouble her. Oh, just someone I know. It wasn't anything important. Don't worry about it. She seemed relieved by my words, then showed me her palms, drenched in sweat, and laughed. I was so nervous. Look, my hands are all sweaty. Because of my experience in a similar industry, Emily had asked me to support her, and I ended up working under her. It was a rewarding job in a lively workplace with a great environment, and I quickly began achieving results. This led to a boost in the company's performance, and Company K soon became the undisputed leader in the industry. Meanwhile, Travis's company, having lost its contract with Company K, found itself left behind in the industry. Their number of contracts plummeted, and their performance hit an all-time low since the company's founding. As a result, Robert was demoted, and Travis faced a salary cut and demotion. It was said that a massive layoff was just a matter of time. Around the time Company K's performance started to soar, I was summoned by the former CEO, Mr. Nelson, who was Emily's stepfather. He was currently traveling the world with his wife on a very belated honeymoon. Under the guise of inspecting domestic and international locations as chairman of Company K. Since he wasn't around the company often, this was my first time speaking to him face to face. I was nervous about what he might say, but to my surprise, he bowed his head and said, "Michael, thank you so much for everything you've done." Not understanding what he meant, I replied to Chairman Nelson, "Please, raise your head. I haven't done anything. If this is about the CEO transition, it was all her doing. I really didn't do anything." Chairman Nelson continued, "Actually, when I married Emily's mother, Emily was against our marriage from the beginning. And who could blame her? She had just lost her biological father, and here I was, suddenly becoming her new father. It wasn't easy. I didn't know how to approach her. Her mother would say, 'Give it time, and things will work out,' so I avoided dealing with it myself. I was surprised. I had always assumed that the relationship between the two of them had been good from the start. At the same time, I remembered that Emily could be surprisingly stubborn. And thinking about how her mother was such an optimist made me feel a bit nostalgic and amused. With all due respect, I really didn't do anything. It was all her hard work." So, as I hesitated, Chairman Nelson disagreed. "No, you changed her. I couldn't do anything about the scars on her face or the wounds in her heart. Emily is a kind girl. So she treated me kindly as a friend of her parents. She used to call me uncle. But she never accepted me as her father. Even after the marriage, she continued to call me uncle, always keeping her distance. To think that this renowned bachelor, known for his success and charisma, who had built his company into a formidable force, would be so timid around his own daughter, it just goes to show you can't judge people by their appearances. But suddenly, she started calling me Dad. I was so happy that I cried, and Emily laughed at me. I had been thinking about passing the business on to the younger generation, so I had been asking Emily if she would take over the company. She finally became open to the idea. I didn't quite understand what had happened, but I couldn't let this opportunity slip away. That's why the CEO transition happened so quickly. Of course, she still has much to learn to lead the company, and I'll be there to guide her. As I began to understand, the charming, cool old man in front of me spoke with a mischievous glint. I never expected that a man like you was behind her change. Emily isn't to be underestimated, but I hope you'll stay by her side to support her. And maybe, just maybe, forever, Chairman Nelson said with a wink, clearly amused by his own mischief, leaving me flustered and scrambling to respond. Wait, what do you mean by that? We're not. He laughed and said, "You can't fool me. The way you two talk about each other, hearts are practically floating out of your eyes. It's embarrassing to watch." I had no defense against that, so I decided to speak honestly about my feelings. I believe she will become a great CEO who understands the pain of others and supports her employees. I plan to stand by her and support her as best as I can. Eventually, I hope to build a life and a family with her, so when that time comes, I hope for your blessing, Dad. Feeling like I had scored a small victory, I glanced at him, but he was clearly one step ahead. With a calm smile, he said, "I don't recall ever becoming the father of such a big son. But I wouldn't mind if it turned out that way in the future." As I stepped out of the chairman's office, feeling a sense of relief, I saw Emily waiting for me right outside the door. With a slightly anxious expression, she looked at me and asked, "What did he say?" Not wanting to explain it myself, I replied, "You should ask him directly, Emily." But, clearly understanding most of it, she turned away with a playful pout and said, "Michael, you're so mean. I'm not talking to you," and marched down the hallway with a huff, pretending to be upset. To make up for it, I hurried after her, pretending to be flustered, and suggested, "How about we go out for dinner with your parents sometime soon? I could even invite my mom to join us." Emily, catching my meaning, looked back at me with a smile and said, "Oh? You mean? That sounds great. Let's pick a good date and plan it out." And so, I found myself walking down the path of life again with the woman I had loved since our college days but had once let go. A truly beautiful person is someone whose heart is pure and kind. It's not just about appearances. Emily, who understands the pain of others, is a truly beautiful person with an unyielding spirit. Someone who can stand with the weak is truly worthy of being a leader. I will do my best to support this wonderful woman and live our lives together. There are two flavors I'll never forget. One is the simmered hamburger steak my mom used to make. The other is garlic-infused fried chicken. I've never tasted anything at a fancy restaurant that surpasses these. I know why. They're dishes deeply tied to my heart. My name is Jason. I'm a 44-year-old orthopedic surgeon. And, even at this age, I'm still single. I never had the luxury to think about marriage. After my father passed away and the clinic was closed, I worked tirelessly to reopen it myself. I did it for my late parents and for my second mother. My father's orthopedic clinic was located in the heart of the downtown area. There are many patients in this area where a lot of elderly people live. The clinic was always crowded with people. I'm going to Kevin's house. As an elementary school kid, I would throw my backpack down and dash out the door. Kevin, my childhood friend since kindergarten, lived about 10 minutes away from the clinic at his family's bento shop. My father was a doctor, and my mother a nurse, so they were always too busy to leave the clinic. That's why I went to Kevin's place almost every day. Of course, I enjoyed playing with him, but there was something else I looked forward to. "Hey, champ, welcome." Kevin's mom, Mary, always greeted me like that. And while we pretended to work on homework, she'd sneak us some leftovers from the shop. "Study hard, okay?" Sometimes it was a croquette, fried shrimp, grilled meat, or even a rolled omelet. This is kind of a letdown. Yeah, no meat lately. Even as we complained, the side dishes were a feast for us, hungry after school. But there was one thing we always called the jackpot. That was their famous fried chicken. Garlic and spices made it taste so grown up to us. Kevin's mother knew that too. On fried chicken days, she'd always grin and handsome over to us. Both Kevin and I were only children. We were each being raised to take over our family's businesses. We went to the same school through middle school, but our paths finally split in high school. See you around. Yeah. We made that promise on graduation day, but over time, we drifted apart. In the early summer of my junior year, my father went out of town for a conference. By that time, my mother had already passed away. She had fallen ill when I was in the lower grades of elementary school. The only memory I have of her is the simmered hamburger steak she made for my birthday. Since I was so excited and said, "This is delicious," my mom has made it for every celebration and event ever since. Will you be okay on your own? I'll be fine. When I get back, I'll make your mom's hamburger steak for you. I'm not a kid anymore, Dad. I waved goodbye as he left. I was planning to invite Kevin over for the first time in a while and enjoy the freedom. We hadn't seen much of each other since we went to different high schools, so I was more focused on that than on my dad's trip. I never imagined it would be our final goodbye. I thought Dad would be back tomorrow. Kevin and I spent the night listening to his favorite artist's music, laughing at meaningless things. Then the phone rang in the middle of the night. Kevin was fast asleep. Rubbing my tired eyes, I picked up the receiver. Hello? Is this Jason? A firm voice, like someone hitting a stone. It was my father's colleague, a physician. What's going on? I wanted to let you know about your father. He didn't look well today, he might not be feeling great. He seemed fine when he left, but maybe a doctor's eyes saw something I didn't. Okay. Thanks for letting me know. I waited anxiously for my dad to return. When he did come back, he indeed looked pale. As a doctor, he must have realized it too. He went for tests at the hospital immediately. The results were grim, and he was given a terminal diagnosis. Treatment began right away. But his body, worn down by years of overwork, didn't last long. Just before I started my senior year of high school, my father passed away peacefully in his sleep. A few days later, we held the funeral. I was still in shock, feeling like I was floating through the whole experience. Not a single tear came. The one who cried the most was Kevin's mother, Mary. Thank you for everything, Mary. After the service, I thanked her and Kevin as they were leaving. Champ, if you need anything, don't hesitate to ask. Mary, her eyes red from crying, looked at me with concern. Yeah. Thanks to you too, Kevin. Kevin didn't meet my eyes once. He probably didn't want me to see him cry. My parents didn't have much family left, and both of my grandparents had passed away early. With no relatives to rely on, I was left all alone. My father had made sure I had enough to cover college tuition, so at least I didn't have to worry about that. But the real challenge was the now empty clinic. As the only son, I had inherited it. However, the maintenance costs were steep. I didn't want to lose the clinic my father had left behind. From that moment, my goal became clear: to reopen his clinic. I started dipping into the savings my parents had left, doing my best to live frugally. My goal was to get into a national university medical school that I could commute to from home. I focused on studying for the entrance exam, and once that was over, I immediately started working part-time. My days were packed with university classes and work, leaving me only enough time to come home and sleep. To save on food costs, I'd buy discounted items at the grocery store right before closing. The one indulgence I allowed myself was on payday. On those days, I'd always go to Mary's bento shop and treat myself to a fried chicken bento. Working late every day, huh? You've lost a bit of weight, haven't you? Mary always kept an eye on my health. Compared to you, I look thin, Mary. You've gotten cheeky, haven't you? She'd puff up her round cheeks playfully. Here, I added a little extra for you. Mary would always pile on more rice and fried chicken. Thanks, as always. I told you, if you ever need help, I'll be there. I'd bow my head and head home. Entering my dark, empty house, I always found myself missing the warm glow of the bento shop. About a year into this routine, I ran into Kevin in front of the shop. I was shocked by how he looked. His hair was dyed silver, he had several piercings, and even his nails were painted. Maybe it was his love for hard rock showing through. You've really changed. This has nothing to do with you, Jason. His cold tone caught me off guard. What's with the attitude? You just go on and be a great doctor, okay? It wasn't just his appearance, Kevin seemed to have changed on the inside too. At that moment, Mary came out from the back of the shop. Oh, champ, welcome. She noticed Kevin too. Kevin, you're back. Don't just stand there, come inside. Kevin clicked his tongue and headed toward the house behind the shop. You must be surprised. He's joined a band at college. Mary sighed. Kevin's changed, hasn't he? She lowered her voice. Well, after arguing with his father about his future, he barely talks to us anymore. Kevin had gone to a 4-year university. His father, on the other hand, wanted him to attend culinary school and take over the family business. He said, "There's no way I'm taking over such an outdated shop," and since then, his relationship with his dad has been terrible. Mary had always seemed so cheerful, I had no idea this was happening. Are you okay, Mary? Well, we're family. We'll figure it out, she said, brushing off the worry with her usual brightness. Oh, here, take this. She handed me a bag filled with fried chicken, croquettes, simmered dishes, and salad. I can't take this much. It's just leftovers. We'd have to throw it out anyway, so please take it. Mary pushed the bag into my hands. One day, I'll definitely repay you. Just seeing your face every day is enough for me. She waved her hand with a smile. A few months later, Kevin suddenly came to visit me. He had a large bag and a guitar slung over his shoulder, and he looked like he had something heavy on his mind. What's going on? Come inside. No, I'm fine here. Kevin stood at the doorway, staring at me with a serious expression. I'm leaving home. I held my breath. Why? I'm going to try to go pro. I'll be staying with a friend for a while. I didn't know what to say in that moment. To this day, I still don't know what the right response would have been. Should I have told him to stop, that going pro was unrealistic? Or should I have encouraged him and said he could do it? In the end, I couldn't say anything. I just stood there, frozen. Take care of my parents for me. What do you mean, take care of? They're your parents. But Kevin only gave a sad smile and walked away. The way he waved his hand looked just like how Mary always did. After that, Kevin really did disappear. According to Mary, he had finally left after clashing with his father about his future. By the time I was in my second year of college, my routine had settled, and I found myself with a bit more free time. Since Kevin had left, Mary had always worn a smile tinged with sadness. I started helping out at the shop whenever I had a free moment. I'll make sure to pay you for your work. Come on, with all the fried chicken you've given me over the years, I'm still in debt. As I worked at the shop, I began to notice something. Mary always made extra fried chicken. And she would hand it to me, saying it was leftover. You shouldn't do that, Mary. If you keep this up, your shop will go under. I had already sensed that the shop wasn't doing well financially. I'm so glad you're here, champ. This is my way of saying thank you. Mary's eyes filled with tears as she clasped her hands together. I'm sure she saw a bit of Kevin in me. While working alongside Mary, I managed to finish my 6 years of medical school. Of course, when it came time to prepare for the national exam, Mary insisted I stop helping. If Champ doesn't pass because of this, I won't be able to face your parents. With her support, I passed the exam on the first try. I spent the next 5 years as a resident at the university hospital. As a resident, my life was consumed by work and studying, with barely any time to sleep. Working night shifts, I often found myself passing by the dark bento shop more and more. I wonder how Mary's doing. I'd mutter to myself, too exhausted to do anything but fall asleep. One evening, just as the sun was setting, I found myself walking by the bento shop again for the first time in a long while. It was dinner time, and the shop was bustling with customers. As I passed by, I saw Mary busy packing bento boxes and side dishes, but I tried to slip by unnoticed. Hey, champ. Wait up. Mary had spotted me. You haven't eaten yet, have you? Here, take this. She handed me a special bento, packed with extra side dishes. Mary, I'm working now, you know, I said, pulling a 1,000 yen bill from my wallet. I know, but you'll always be like a kid to me, she said with a smile. Her face was thinner, and there were more wrinkles than I remembered. Mary, are you okay? You're not overworking yourself, are you? I'm fine, just a little busy. I realized she must have been close to 60 by then. Don't push yourself too hard. She waved me off with her usual gesture as I left. After my residency, I was set to move to a distant general hospital to further specialize in orthopedic surgery. I tried to visit the shop several times to say goodbye, but it was often closed. Just before my transfer, I stopped by her house, and Kevin's father answered the door. She's in the hospital. What happened? She's just exhausted, but don't worry, she'll be out in a week. Not wanting to show her weakness, she refused any visits. And so, I moved without getting the chance to say goodbye. I worked at my new hospital for a long time, building up 20 years of experience. Eventually, I decided to return to the university hospital to prepare for reopening my father's clinic. I wrote to Mary several times, but never received a reply. After settling in at the university, I headed straight for the bento shop, only to find it permanently closed. I rang the doorbell at her house, but there was no answer. I slumped my shoulders in disappointment. Where could Mary have gone? I shook off the worst-case scenario from my mind. Work at the university hospital quickly consumed me, and I didn't have time to search for her. Then, one day, an elderly woman came in, complaining of severe back pain. She had been referred by a local clinic that suspected another condition. When I glanced at the name on the chart, I was speechless. Mary. It was Mary. Thank you for seeing me, she said, her back bent and her body much thinner than I remembered. She squinted, trying to make out my face. Mary, it's me. My voice trembled. She tilted her head in confusion. It's me, Jason. Kevin's childhood friend. Her eyes widened in recognition. Oh, champ. Look at how you've grown. It's all thanks to you, Mary. I didn't do anything. You're the one who worked hard, champ. Her face, now lined with age, was streaked with tears. I'm so glad I got to see you. Mary's husband had already passed away, and now she was living with relatives. What about Kevin? Mary weakly shook her head. I see. I gently helped Mary lie down and began her examination. Looking at the x-rays and test results, it was clear she needed treatment beyond orthopedics. She would need internal medicine and possibly surgery. I've lived long enough. I don't want any more tests or treatments, Mary said quietly, her words causing my hands to clench into fists. Don't say that. We'll get through this together, I said, gripping her hand tightly, making a promise. Where had her once plump hands gone? Now, they were just skin and bones. After consulting with internal medicine and surgery, Mary was admitted to the hospital immediately. The plan was to restore her strength through internal treatment before proceeding with surgery. I visited her every day. Are you eating properly, champ? She asked me the same thing she had 30 years ago. I'm eating just fine, I replied, knowing that in her eyes, I was still the 18-year-old boy she once knew. As she continued her treatment, another issue became apparent. Her cognitive function was declining. At first, it was just minor forgetfulness and emotional outbursts. Then, slowly, in her mind, I regressed to being an elementary school kid. Thanks to Champ visiting, Kevin's doing his homework again. Oh, today I've got plenty of fried chicken. In reality, Kevin had just copied my notes back then. And sometimes we gave the fried chicken to stray dogs. Thanks, Mary. Somehow, that became the only thing I could say in response. Occasionally, Mary would return to the present. When I visited, I'd find her lying in bed, staring up at the ceiling. I wonder how Kevin's doing. A sharp pain stabbed through my chest. Back at the office, I made a decision and placed a call. 2 weeks later, a man walked into Mary's hospital room. A woman holding a child stood behind him. I quickly stood up from where I had been sitting with Mary. Kevin, you came. Kevin nodded to me. Sorry for not getting in touch sooner. Please go see Mary. I stepped aside to give him room. To find Kevin, I had called every middle school friend I could remember. I even asked our old teacher and some neighbors. It turned out Kevin had been closer than I thought. He had become a chef and was working in the neighboring city. He had given up on becoming a professional musician during his student days. Mom! Kevin gently called out to her. Mary slowly opened her eyes. Who is it? It's me, Kevin. Kevin? Yeah, it's me. Mom, remember when you got mad at me for copying Jason's homework? Or when you made me skip dinner because I didn't help out at the shop? And when I said I wanted to be in a band, you told me I had talent? Kevin's voice trembled as he spoke. The woman behind him, likely his wife. She held their child close. Kevin. Kevin, you've come home. Finally, recognition lit up Mary's eyes. How are you? Are you hungry? She reached out her frail hand to touch him. Kevin gently took her hand in his, holding it tightly. I'm sorry for worrying you, Mom. Mary motioned with her free hand, and I adjusted the bed so she could sit up. I'm married now, Mom. And this is your grandchild. His wife carefully brought their child closer to Mary. The little boy looked a bit nervous. Mary softly patted his head. He looks just like you, Kevin, she said, her voice filled with warmth. I watched them from the side and quietly left the room. About 30 minutes later, I got a call from the nurse's station. Kevin wanted to see me. Jason, thank you, he said, looking a bit embarrassed. At that moment, I felt a surge of anger. He had left Mary alone for over 20 years, and yet she never uttered a single word of resentment toward him. "Let's talk," I said coldly, and we headed to the hospital courtyard. "Why didn't you reach out all these years?" Mary had always wanted to see him. Living just one city over, he could have come any time. "I did come," Kevin shot back, his voice rising in anger at my accusatory tone. "I went to the shop. I saw you there, working with her, like you were her real son." "It's always been that way. You were the smart, good kid. My parents' favorite." Kevin's emotions erupted. "That's not true. They were just worried about me. My dad used to say, if only Kevin were as smart as Jason, I could trust him with the shop." "No, you've got it wrong. It only means they had high hopes for you. I hated always being compared to you." Kevin's sharp words left me speechless. But after swallowing my pride, I asked him again, "Did you hate me?" "Yeah, I did." I lowered my head, my shoulders trembling. "Okay. Then I won't show up in front of you or Mary ever again. But you, please, be there for her." I fought back tears. I had always thought I was grateful to both Mary and Kevin. But maybe I had been the one to sever their bond. Perhaps I would never see either of them again. At that moment, I truly believed it would be the last time I'd see them. For a while after, I closely monitored Mary's condition. However, her health continued to deteriorate. The surgeons eventually told me that surgery was no longer an option, leaving my heart in turmoil. The decision was made to switch to palliative care, and she was scheduled for a transfer to another hospital. On the day of the transfer, I stood by the window, looking down at the hospital's roundabout. Soon, a car would arrive, and Mary would be taken to the new facility. Just then, my phone rang in my pocket. Mary's family would like to say their final goodbyes. "Kevin?" I quickly made my way to her room. The room was tidy, and everything was ready for the transfer. As I entered, Kevin walked over to me with big strides. "I'm sorry about last time," he said, bowing deeply. "After that, I was able to talk to Mom a bit. She told me how much she appreciated you. I'm the one who could never repay her." Actually, Kevin looked straight at me. "I'm thinking of reopening the bento shop. But there's one problem." "A problem?" I thought maybe it was funding. Or family opposition. "The fried chicken recipe. The only person who can teach me is you." I couldn't help but burst out laughing. "My teaching fee isn't cheap, you know. I'll pay you with 10 bentos. That's a deal." We shook hands firmly. Mary watched us with a big smile on her face. Less than a year later, Mary passed away peacefully. Her face looked serene, as if she had found peace. Kevin reopened the bento shop and now works tirelessly, pouring his heart into it. As for me, I'm finally fulfilling my 20-year dream of reopening my father's clinic this spring. The scent of fried chicken wafted through the air, carried by the petals of cherry blossoms.